Okay, welcome to our midweek Bible study, Eden to Eternity. Today we're going to be covering session 4, which we're going to take a little bit of a turn here. We're going to be covering Job chapters 1 through chapter 5. The idea of the chronological reading plan is that we read the books of the Bible in what is believed to be the chronological order of events rather than how they are ordered in the Bible. The story of Job occurred in a parallel time frame to Genesis. So the readings in Job appeared in the chronological plan at the point at which Job is believed to have been alive. Now, Job is legendary for his exemplary response to great suffering. We know little about the dates and settings pertaining to Job, but many scholars believe that the book of Job is one of the oldest in the Bible. Now that doesn't mean that Job lived before anyone else in the Bible. He most certainly came after Adam. But there are hints that Job lived in a truly ancient time. Job offered sacrifices himself for his family instead of relying on a priest. And his wealth was measured in livestock, not gold. It is likely that Job lived sometime between the flood and the time of Moses. It seems clear that Job lived prior to the giving of the law, since the book of Job makes no mention of a tabernacle or temple, priest, or the law given to Israel. Another clue that places Job in the time prior to Moses is the fact that Job gave his daughters an inheritance among their brothers. That's Job 42:15. Now, under the Mosaic law, a father passed his inheritance to sons only, unless he had no sons. A righteous man such as Job would have followed that law in obedience to God. In Job's case, the law had not yet been given. Today's lesson lands us about 400 years after the flood, and we meet a man named Job. Initially, he sounds a lot like Noah. He's blameless and upright, and he fears God. In Noah's story, things got really dark. Then there was some relief at the end. We will see the same pattern play out in Job's story. In Job 1 and 6, Scripture referred to angels as the sons of God. Satan came also among them to present themselves before the Lord. And this is when God initiates a conversation about Job with Satan. After God initiates the conversation about Job with one of his enemies, the enemy concocts a plan to test Job. And what does God do? God allows it. There's something noteworthy here. God does not create the plan for testing Job, but God allows it. He is not the active agent in the evil perpetrated by Satan, but he is still sovereign over it. In his mercy, he limits it. Satan is on a leash. He is not allowed to take Job's life. Now, Satan attacks Job in a variety of ways. Job's losses come twice as acts of men from the Sabaeans and the Chaldeans, and twice as acts of nature, fire from heaven and wind. God grants Satan the opportunity to influence both of these things. the acts of man and the acts of nature. For God to allow Satan to influence these things means that God himself is the one who has control over those things. Because you cannot give someone influence over something that is not in your domain. Job's response is very humble here. In 122 it says, in all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. He acknowledges that everything comes from God's hand and he receives it. He's handling his grief pretty well until 3 of his friends show up on the scene. They come to show him some sympathy and comfort him, and they do a great job of that during the 7 days when they sit in silence with him. The problem comes when his 3 friends start to speak. Now, there are some good lessons for us here in how to comfort someone who has experienced trauma or loss. Sitting with them in silence is a safe bet. But Job's friends start giving him bad counsel, starting with Eliphaz. Eliphaz claims to have a word from God about what Job has done wrong. That's found in Job 4, verses 12 through 16. And what he does is he insinuates that Job has brought this trouble on himself. But we know from the story that Eliphaz is wrong. In the next session, we will see how Job responds to his opinionated friend. Here is God's snapshot. God's sovereignty over evil should serve as a great comfort to his children. God limits the actions of the enemy. Every action the enemy takes against Job serves God's greater purpose as we see them unfold in the rest of Job's story. Now, this story gets dark, but it has a happy ending. So that has been session 4. Once again, we covered Job chapters 1 through 5. Take time with the Lord to read through this and see what God has to say to you. Once again, be blessed, and I'll see you all next week.